Those who were not able to attend were encouraged to do their best to attend today's one. We also encourage to invite our family and friends to join the Allow Black People family. Also, a leaderboard made up of members who managed to participate in the tasks assigned to us within the week were kept in the group. In addition, a notice was kept in the group that Cote d'Ivoire and Chad were celebrating their Independence Day. Thus, Cote d'Ivoire celebrated its Independence Day on the 7th of this month. And then Chad also celebrated on the 11th of this month. Furthermore, a book was kept on the page by our co-founder, Sinclair, for members to read and share what they had from the book with the group members. Again, a post in the page reminded us that we stand against racism and xenophobia anywhere and everywhere we go or we find ourselves. Furthermore, various social media platforms for the family were shared in the group for members to subscribe, join, follow, share, like, and retweet messages, and also invite more friends and family to join. Last but not least, new members and ambassadors were added to the group. Rules and regulations were spelled out to them, and also documents and material they need in order to
21. In our group, Kenya, we encourage members to recommend Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses. We encourage members to visit I Love Black People website and register as members or ambassadors. We also invite our friends and family to join the I Love Black People movement. We encourage our members to join Saturday Zoom meeting, also invite family members and friends. In the case of any emergency, our members, we encourage them to
ambassadors, co-founders, I'm Victor Camara from Liberia. This week's activity started with a great book, The Keys to the Colors, posted by Mr. Skinner. The book writer discussed the effects of racism on Black people, the color confrontations, the white supremacy culture, and the situation that is now central in South Africa, and etc. The writer information is genuine and educative. Additionally, members in the group were asked to follow all social accounts of a lot of Black people. In the May week, we wish Czech Republic happy independence and celebrated International Youth Days around the world. COVID-19 updates in my country include the total of 5,459 total cases, deaths, 148 recovered, 0. Finally, new members were added to our group and were asked to confirm our attendance for today's meeting. Thank you, everyone. Victor Camara reporting from Liberia. I am because we are.
Thank you very much, Victor Camara. Up next, we have Zoe Owusu from Ghana. Zoe Owusu, can you? Okay. You have only 1 minute. Yes.
I hope you can hear me. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. I Love Black People, Ghana Chapter Weekly Report, dated 13th August 2021. Week under review, second quarter of August. That's 7th July 2021 to the 14th of, that's 7th August 2021 to the 14th of August 2021. Summary of activities. We started by enjoying our usual spokesperson's report on activities in their respective countries, which was accompanied by our honorable co-founder's speech. Our most edutainment Pan-African class and healthcare class session was delivered by Professor Dr. Terren Wright and Nana Ekuya Nzenzela, a traditional healer and founder of the Natural Path Holistic Wellness, was successfully delivered. Our regular Tuesday newsletters, which highlights on education, health, legal, finance, transportation, beauty, food, and accommodation content, was enjoyed. Members are encouraged to submit their contributions on Thursdays for review and publishing. We join our brothers and sisters in celebrating in memories the Independence Day of Chad, which is the 11th of August, 1960. Central African Republic, 13th August 1960, and Republic of Congo, 15th August 1960. I love Black people. We say, Happy Independence Day, brothers and sisters of Africa. I love Black people members were encouraged to follow, like, retweet, and comment on the various social media platforms of the groups. That's WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and others. Our honorable ambassadors were grouped on tax base to help affect the mission, vision of the group. We advise every active member to embark on a weekly contribution to the various I Love Black People movement platforms, activities in protection against racism and xenophobia. Members and ambassadors are reminded to submit Black-owned, Black-friendly businesses to the group's website with format provided in our various group chats. I Love Black People members, family, and friends are to use our emergency button located at the bottom left of the iloveblackpeople.com website in the heat, fight, or protection of racism and xenophobic attacks wherever you find yourself. Members who went against the group's mission, objectives, and goals were informed to stick to the group's mission, objectives, and goals only if they want to enjoy the membership. I Love Black People members, both old and new, are once again encouraged to stick to the I Love Black People mission and contribute only to the fight against racism and xenophobic attacks. Members who weren't able to attend the Zoom conference call session on last week, Saturday, are encouraged to do so this time and further recommend others by sharing the link to this Saturday's meeting. Quote of the week: I have a sense of passion about Black, about African people, so I want to use any vehicle we have to uplift Black people, and I see history and knowledge of self as part of that. Dr. Runuka Rashidi, American historian, author, and scholar. Live it, love it. You are Black, we are Black. I am because we are. Weekly COVID-19 updates, Ghana. Total number of cases, we have 109,428. Deaths, 899 sudden deaths. Recoveries, 102,390. This is reported by Ambassador Zoe Owusu-Agbe, Patrice Lumumba Ambassador. I love Black people. I am because we are. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Zoe Owusu. Up next, we have Joy Ngetichi from Kenya. Joe, can you hear us? Joy Ngetichi, can you hear us? Okay. I think he has a problem with the network. Up next, we are going to have Mr. Christopher Mapondera. Mr. Christopher Mapondera, can you hear us?
Yeah, okay, Justin, can you hear me too?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Welcome.
All right, good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different from usual. I want to have a shared screen and speak from some text I have. Can you enable shared screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, you are able to share your screen now.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's just, okay. Can you see what I got now?
Yes.
Yeah, all right.
I love Black people, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, today, there are two things. The Pan-African news I have today is that, as you know, in the last few days, there were elections in Zambia on which the incumbent, Dr. President Lungu lost to another contestant, it seems so far the results are pointing to the fact that President Lungu may lose the elections. But again, you never come to a complete conclusion with these issues until the final count is done and all the contestants, accept the results. But otherwise, from the reports that I have been following, there was no violence, at least reported by the international press, because as African people, at times we don't speak for ourselves. We wait to hear from what the CNN or BBC says about our activities. So far right now, that's the only basis of information that I have. But again, I want to congratulate the people of Zambia for having had these successful elections. And it just demonstrates that when we are left to our own devices, we can make our own decisions. It's only when some outside powers decide who should be our leaders that we find ourselves embroiled in conflict in many cases. So I would like to shout out to the people of Zambia for a job well done. Now today I'm going to talk about our resources. People, we talk so much. We talk so much about African resources, but we really don't know exactly what is it that we are talking about. So today I thought I would go over the mineral resources of Africa and try to give a little bit of background of what this is all about. But what I also want you to take into account that each and every one of the minerals that I'm going to show is a potential wealth creator. It's a potential job creator. It's a potential to develop our communities. But most of the resources that you are going to hear about, very few of us control them. Very few of us even understand, how to exploit them to be of use to us. The first ones I have is the energy minerals, which include coal, gas, oil, and uranium. I would add to it lithium. That is a new energy mineral, which again, some years back, we never looked at the lithium as an energy mineral. As you know, that with the intervention of electric vehicles and so forth, they need the electric batteries that they use lithium. And also lithium is now quite widely used in torch batteries and many other gadgets where they need the power. Now, if we look at these 4 or 6, 5 that I mentioned, what I urge you is to check within your own individual countries. Do you have any of these resources, and who controls them, and how can you get involved yourselves? We cannot afford to say, well, these are things that are left just to people with money or foreigners to come and exploit them. Even now, our educational system must be based on the resources that we have. We must be able to teach in our universities, in our technical schools, how to convert coal into electric power, which means we have electrical engineers, we've got power engineers. Same thing with the gas. By gas, they are talking of natural gas, of which so many things can be done out of natural gas. You've got the liquefied natural gas, which we use right now. I'll say the bulk of it we either import or it requires very sophisticated plants to convert the gas into liquid gas and so into liquid energy. But again, right now it seems so mythical because we're not putting much emphasis in understanding how these things are done. Oil, of course, as I mentioned some time back, that Africa is blessed with the oil all over. There are still many places in Africa that are still being discovered, to have oil reserves, coal, and gas and so forth. But again, these are all activities that are being done by foreign people. The next group that I have is the metallic minerals. Metallic minerals have got various types. The ferrous minerals, these are the minerals that are utilized in the production of iron and steel products. Again, we need to understand, what these products are. Check, within your own countries, check with the geological department. We have iron, we have niobium, we have tantalum, we have titanium. And these products, again, they are converted into all kinds of products that we find in the market today. For instance, titanium is utilized for making, metal instruments, knives, sharp knives, hardened steels and so forth. There's so many, items that are utilized. Again, I think as part of your own trying to understand, what this is all about, go to the library, go online, and get more information. What is iron all about? What is niobium? What is tantalum? What is titanium? You'll find that it's quite a treasure trove of information accompanying each and every one of these. And then you've got the precious metals, the three main ones. It's gold, platinum, and silver. Again, there's a myth, that gold is something that is a Western discovery. But our people from way back, from time immemorial, were used to production of gold. They knew, how to identify gold, convert it into various ornaments to a certain, value. Again, I'll say probably gold is one of the most distributed elements throughout Africa. But we have not been, exploiting it to our best use. France has got more gold reserves than any single African country. And yet all the gold that the French have came from Africa. And they come and take all our gold and they say, oh, we are very poor countries, but they took all our gold and they have it in their countries and call themselves, rich countries. So platinum, again, we bought quite a substantial amount of that. In terms of market value, you find that the gold, they put it at the top, and then you've got the platinum, then the silver comes third. But it depends, again, with the economic situation. There are certain times when silver, it gets more value than platinum or gold. Again, it's just people playing with the stock markets, where they play around, how they put value on this product. But as African people, again, we have got so many of these resources, and they are worth trillions of dollars. So when people say, well, Africa is poor, it's not that we are poor out of resources, it's just that we are poor by not converting the resources that we have into products that add value to our communities. And then the next of the metallic minerals are what we call the base minerals. These are bauxite, aluminum, cobalt, copper, lead, magnesium, molybdenum, nickel, and zinc. Again, given the different stages of industrial development, you find that each and every one of these products at one time played a very significant role. Remember, some time back, all the roofing was made of, zinc, or they used the zinc coating on them in order to protect them from, rusting and so forth. Then you've got nickel, which is a very important, again, component in the manufacture of steel products, but also we have, nickel used in the production of coins, like the US 1 penny coin, is made out of, nickel, zinc combination and stuff like that. Molybdenum, manganese, magnesium. Again, all these products, they have both the industrial use, but they also have certain medical applications as well. I'm sure you have heard of, magnesium, potassium, magnesium salts, that are used for, various ailments and so forth. Copper, we have used the copper. If you go into the African history, you find that the copper was one of the metals that was discovered a long, long time ago. You find in our traditional jewelry and so forth, quite a lot of it was made out of copper, and at times mixed with the lead and so forth. But what you have to take into account is that these people, they did not have the textbooks as we know them today, but they had an understanding, of the chemistry and physics of metals, how extractive chemistry that they had, but they didn't have that, written in any textbooks. They knew, how heat could be utilized to melt iron, that was, embedded in certain rocks and so forth. Then, of course, there's the cobalt, of which is more plentiful in the DRC and also in South Sudan. Cobalt, as you know, is again a major component, in the production of cell phones and all that. Again, at times, we say, we don't know what sort of fields to get into. I've heard quite a few young people asking me, well, I'm finishing my high school, what should I do? And so forth, So any one of these metals, can actually provide you with a way of defining which way you want to go. You can become a specialist in the production of copper, you can become a specialist in the use of cobalt, lead, all these opportunities, but again, all these metals, they do have value, which we should be able to exploit and use for our needs. And then the next group is the industrial minerals. You've got the bentonite. Bentonite is a kind of a clay. It has got so many uses as well. But the industrial carbonates, which are used in steel making, but they also have a lot of applications in the production of medicines, something, the kaolin, magnesia, potash, salt, sand, silica, and sulfur. They call this the industrial minerals. Again, it's a classification. Again, you can be able to generate industries out of it. These are components that you can also add to other minerals and produce products and so forth. And then I've got the construction minerals. I skipped that. But again, got the brick, which is made out of mostly clay, whether it can be fired, or we got what I call the adobe brick, which is we just use the unfired clay bricks for construction. But the building stone, again, I'm sure every country on the continent has got some stone. The building stone, I've seen quite a few people who make a living out of crushing stone into stone aggregate. And then, of course, cement, which is a combination, for some of the elements you have in your industrial minerals and so forth. Aggregate, just another way of this term for this material stones that you use in your construction and making your concrete structures and so forth. Gypsum, again, it is so many applications, in terms of making plasterboards and paint. And there's so many, materials, that you can use for gypsum. Then sand and gravel, slate. I'm sure some of you are familiar with that. But again, for everything that I put on this table, I would, ask you to spend some time, go and do some research on it, see how much of it is in your particular country, and how much of it can you really use as a way of creating employment for yourself, or of creating a business for yourself. You can have a business, for just making bricks only, or you can have a business and employ a lot of people just making crushed rock, crushed stone for, aggregate, for, or else, in terms of sand. Again, all these are opportunities that one can be able to use. And then finally, the precious stones. The diamonds is the major one, but when we talk of gems, there's I'll just exaggerate and say that there are hundreds of gems. You're talking of amethyst, you're talking of, there's just so many. Again, I would urge you to, again, spend some time, do some research on it, on the internet and so forth. I think the process of doing that research work yourselves will help you to understand, what is it that you're looking for. And from my main intent today was that at times it's useless to just say, well, we've got so many resources in Africa that we don't know what we're talking about. This is just an example, for what we have, and that there are so many others that haven't been discovered. If you go to your chemical, periodicals, you can rest assured that we have basically probably all of the elements that are on the periodicals. It's just for us to understand what we have. If there are any specific and special areas, again, that we want to talk about, you're most welcome to let me know. And if I can talk about it today, we can cover it in future discussions. So that's what I have for you today. Yvonne?
Yes. And we have some questions. The first one is from Cornerstone from Nairobi. He's asking, how can oil producing nations in Africa have an upper hand in negotiating terms in international oil price markets just above the common manipulators?
My take on it, that we have allowed people to exploit our resources for their own use. Okay, if we were to establish oil processing industries to produce the petrol to meet the needs of the African people, we may not even need to be exporting any of the oil that we produce in Africa. I mean, if you look at the needs of 1.4 billion people, okay, the United States and Europe, when you combine all those countries together, they still don't make up $1.4 billion and the 4 billion people. And yet they consume the majority or the bulk of the oil or petrol that is produced. So my feeling that we should convert this oil for use by the African people, and then we can determine our own price because it is an internal consumption. But when we have to try and compete with the outside people, then they start manipulating the prices. If you do say something that they don't like, they will artificially lower the price of oil, which has nothing to do with your production costs, which has nothing to do with the market of law of supply and demand. But because they want to fix you, they will collude, to bring the prices below your production cost, which will just, makes it impossible for you to operate. So my take that we should produce our oil for our own use, and we don't need to be exporting to anybody if we produce the product to meet our needs. Yes, one next question.
Yes, the next question is from Seram Fiake from Ghana. He's asking, are we not giving too much value to the minerals at its low stage? It becomes more variable when the value is added to it. By the way, the other continents have these minerals too. He's asking whether these are the other continents has minerals.
Well, yeah, some may also have the same minerals, but it's the question. There are two things that happens in this mineral world. Others have got the minerals, but they want to exploit others first. You'll find that if we are not careful, they will come and exploit all our minerals before they start using their own. And then we'll start going to beg them for things that we used to have ourselves. Okay, so I would say the thing is for us to add value to our own minerals. This is the technology is there, the textbooks are there. We just have to sit down and work out, how we're going to convert these, minerals for our own use, and then we can also determine our price. Just like the way they play the games. If they want the price of gold to go up, they'll just withdraw putting gold on the market, and then it creates this artificial demand, and then the prices start going up. And when the prices reach the level they want, then all of a sudden they start releasing that gold to the market, and then the prices start, either coming down or become stable. So we can do the same thing ourselves. Okay, anything else? I hope I have answered that question. Yvonne?
Yes.
Yeah, I think my time is up, but I mean, if you want, I can do one more question, but I know Akua will be on my back, but nevertheless, I think let's see, not to mess up with airtime.
Yes.
Sister Akua, can forgive me for that, but otherwise, I wish you a happy weekend. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Up next, you have Nana Akua. Nana Akua, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Mr. Mapindera said, I'll be on this back.
Right. Wow, time is precious, so I don't want to mess up with that.
All of our time is precious. I'm just on a tight schedule, that's all. But thank you. Well, okay. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. So this week we are talking about, thank you for all the beautiful faces I can see. Today we are talking about herbs, homeopathic remedies, essential oils, and superfoods. So if we have some return Zoom meeting callers or Zoom callers, you may have heard this information again. So hopefully this will just be reinforcement. But what I would like to just point out, hey, Vaughn, uh-oh, she disappeared. Hey, Vaughn. I want you to, hopefully for those that are in this class in WhatsApp, that you received the handouts and have been following along in your reading materials. But as you're listening, what I would like you to do is kind of keep track of some herbs that you feel would be beneficial for you or your family, some homeopathic remedies, that seem to be useful for you, whatever essential oils you would find helpful, as well as some other nutritional supplements or superfoods that, that your body and any conditions you may have can heal from. So I really want you to kind of listen and kind of be taking either physical notes or mental notes, right, of what things can really be useful for you. So what I would like to do is share the screen. If you will allow me, Yvonne.
Yes, you're allowed.
This is, I think, week 2. Is that right? I want to say this is week 2. And so all my stuff, right? Is it okay? You should see the herbs handout. Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is the handout package you should have gotten for probably the first day of last week, and then other handouts subsequently. I think what I will do is not try to teach from this handout just because it's so small, and I always kind of go through and have a hard time just picking out certain herbs, right? So years ago, I compiled, I should say, a list of, forgive me, my phone ringing, a list of herbs that I think that we should all kind of have to start our medicine chest. So this Herbal Aids, Nature's Cures, this is a piece that I compiled some years ago. And so I think this is what I'll speak from when we're talking about the herbal medicine section, okay? And so pretty much herbal medicine is defined as the medicinal use of herb plants and trees to regain or maintain health. Herbs are used to cleanse, detoxify, rebuild, and tone in order to bring the body back into balance. Mother Nature should be appreciated, not only for her beauty, but also for her valuable resources. And I know earlier, it seems like you all were talking about natural resources, right? So here is yet another when we're talking about herbal plants that are used for food and for medicine. We know that these wonderful cures that nature provides us are often neglected and underrated. So one should always attempt to heal themselves naturally before even considering unnatural or artificial means. There are herbal cures for nearly every disease or illness known to man. And this list is just kind of given some kind of common household herbs that people should kind of have on hand. And if not, I would suggest kind of starting your herbal medicine chest this way. We should have herbs such as valerian and ginger on hand, just as we do aspirin or Alka-Seltzer. And as a matter of fact, I think, I thought back then when I wrote this, and I still think that you should have herbs and natural supplements instead of some of these man-made items. So we should really replace them when we can. And I know that there are certain conditions and situations where you maybe can't completely use natural medicine, but there are many situations and many instances where we're using these synthetic man-made chemicals or drugs that really kind of do a number on the body. And so for as much as we, or for as long as we can avoid those things, that I think is really the optimal situation. So this is sort of your transition. You can transition and learn how to incorporate some of these things. Most are easy to find in your local health food store or pharmacy. Even these days, pharmacies that traditionally would just have prescription drugs and other synthetic things are now carrying herbal medicines. It's especially here in the States. And in other parts of the world, as I have often stated, this is when you would go to your herbal clinic or your traditional healer to get whatever local herbs that can be used for common issues, whether we're talking about digestive issues like acid reflux or indigestion or nausea or constipation or diarrhea, or if we're talking about some type of pain issue, whether it's headaches, backaches, joint pain, things of that nature. If we're talking about the common cold or flu, there are many situations where we can treat or heal ourselves naturally, okay? So I'd like to use this handout to go through some of the herbs that I would suggest having on hand. The first one listed here is ginger. And these are some of my favorite herbs. Not all are specifically herbs. Some are considered kind of food supplements or nutritional supplements, but all of these are plant-based things, natural remedies, right? So the first one that we are going to focus on is ginger. Ginger cleanses the colon, reduces spasms and cramps, stimulates circulation. It has a strong antioxidant effect. It has antimicrobial agents that heal sores, wounds. They're good for bowel disorders, circulatory problems, fever, hot flashes, indigestion, morning sickness, motion sickness, nausea, and vomiting, right? And we usually use this in either tea form, but most probably effective or quicker results come from the use of tinctures or extracts, or even in capsule form. I'm not a big advocate of herbal teas because I think you have to drink too much to really get the benefit. So a more concentrated type of dosing, I think, is important. So in capsule form, where you have sort of the powdered root or the powdered part of that herb that have been put in capsules, is going to give you more than, say, the leaves or the flowers of that herb in tea form, or a concentrated form of a tincture or a liquid extract of an herb is going to be stronger than, say, a tea bag. The next one is valerian. Valerian improves circulation, acts as a sedative, reduces mucus from colds, is good for anxiety, it's good for fatigue, high blood pressure, insomnia, irritable bowel syndrome, menstrual cramps, muscle cramps, nervousness, pain, spasms, stress, ulcers. Valerian is one of my favorite herbs. I think it's very versatile. I think it's good to use at different age groups, different health levels. It's good for pregnant women, for elderly people, for young children. So valerian is very good in that way. Valerian has a very strong, even foul odor, actually. So it's not something you're going to want to use in tea form because you will not like the smell. This is something you typically, in my experience, use in capsule form. A tincture or extract, you're still gonna really taste it. And of course, in a tea, you're gonna taste it. Capsules is the best for valerian. Cayenne is, hot red pepper. So we know that it's used as a culinary herb. We know that it has a good flavor and seasoning and kind of adds that spice and hotness to foods. But we also have a lot of medicinal results from cayenne. It aids in digestion, improves circulation. It stops bleeding from ulcers. It's good for the heart, kidneys, lungs, pancreas, spleen, and stomach. It's good for arthritis, rheumatism, and it helps ward off colds and sinus infections and sore throats, right? So of course, you're gonna use this, certainly not in tea form or extract form. You're gonna use this in capsule form. You may even use the actual herb itself in powder form in different liniments or creams that you would use topically, usually for pain. So cayenne is another good one. Garlic, we know, is often used in foods, right, to season our foods, but we know that garlic detoxifies the body and protects against infection. It enhances immune function, right? So it will fight off infections because it boosts the immune system. It lowers blood pressure, improves circulation. It's good for arterial sclerosis, arthritis, asthma, cancer, circulatory problems, colds and flu, digestive problems, heart disorders, sinusitis, ulcers, yeast infections, a number of things. People have used it for cholesterol, for high blood pressure. And you, of course, in the best form is raw, fresh garlic. However, we know that that is not pleasant for everyone. So a lot of times people will get odorless tablets just so that you can consistently take it and not feel like you're always kind of belching up, that garlic taste and smell. But it's for cooking with it. As much as you can add to your foods is always going to give you a good dose of it as well. Rosemary, another popular culinary herb and spice that we cook with, but it has a lot of healing benefits. It fights bacteria. It relaxes the stomach, stimulates circulation and digestion. It's good for headaches. It's good for high and low blood pressure, circulatory problems, and menstrual cramps. You can do this in tea form. You can do this in capsule form, or even extracts or tinctures as well. Charcoal or activated charcoal is what I really should have written here. This is a natural substance that basically removes toxins from the colon and from the bloodstream. This is what you will find when you have food poisoning or have taken in different toxins from the body, even if you go to the emergency room or your standard hospital or clinic. This is what they use to absorb the toxins and draw it from the body. It's useful for gas, upset stomach, food poisoning, diarrhea. It's an antidote for nearly all poison. So again, if there's some kind of food poisoning or some other toxin you've gotten in your body, or even suspect, or you're not sure, and something has happened to your body, you're not sure what is the cause, but maybe you've been someplace you're not normally in, taking in some food that you've normally not, consumed, or you've eaten some of this bush meat and all this other stuff, right, that they sell on the roadside, but it's not agreeing with you. This is the first place you would go and make sure that these toxins are removed from your body. And of course, your stool will be black. Whatever you release will be black, but know that it has, absorbed those toxins and it's removing it from the body. So you can take it in straight powder form, or you can also buy the tablets or the capsules of the activated charcoal. Definitely something I highly recommend. I always travel with charcoal. I'm usually very careful when I travel with what I eat. But from time to time, there will be some kind of stomach upset or some kind of digestive issue. This is the first place I turn to in terms of getting those toxins out of my body. The next one is aloe vera. Aloe vera grows widely over in Africa, in the US. It should be easy to find the actual plants. You simply are using the gel inside of the plant. We know that we can use it topically and internally, right? So topically, we know it heals burns, wounds, stimulates cell regeneration. That's how it heals and regenerates the skin cells when you've been burned or when you've had or abrasion to the skin. It has astringent properties. It's an emollient, it's antifungal, antibacterial, antiviral. So again, it's going to help heal that wound because it's also going to help rid the body of any fungus or parasites or things that have gotten into the body. Internally, we know that it acts as a soother. It's just as soothing as it is to a burn topically, it's soothing internally. So it's good for the entire gastrointestinal system, right? So it's a mild laxative, but it kind of heals the entire gastrointestinal tract. So whether you're talking about the stomach or the intestines, aloe vera is good internally for that. It's also been used for AIDS and for skin and digestive disorders. Here you're using the juice or the gel, as I already mentioned, of the aloe plant. Elderberry is the next one. I just have elder here, but it is the berries of the elder tree that is used. This builds the blood, cleanses the system, eases constipation, enhances immune function, fights inflammation, increases perspiration. It lowers fever. It's good for the respiratory tract, and it stimulates circulation. This is something, again, you can do in tea, but I suggest making it into either a tincture or some sort of syrup or some kind of concentrated extract. The next one is peppermint. I love peppermint. I use peppermint oil daily, but it enhances digestion by increasing stomach acidity. It's useful for chills, colic, diarrhea, headache, heart trouble, indigestion, nausea, poor appetite, rheumatism, and spasms. So while we love the aroma of peppermint, we also know that internally it has a lot of healing properties as well. This you can use in tea form. And of course, the essential oil of peppermint, we will talk a little bit about when we get to essential oils. Echinacea golden seal, very popular. This is usually used in combination, but of course, separately, they're wonderful all on their own. Echinacea has anti-inflammatory and antiviral properties. It's good for the immune system and the lymphatic system. So people use it for colds, flu, colic, infectious illnesses. It's good for snake bites and other insect bites as well. Golden seal is also an antibiotic. It enhances the immune system, promotes the capacity or the functioning capacity of several of our organs, the colon, the liver, the pancreas, the spleen, the lymphatic and respiratory systems. It fights infection. It allows the insulin in your body to work better. It cleanses the body. So it's an all around good herb, but in combination, a lot of people use these during cold and flu season. Of course, during this time of Corona, this is a good combination to boost your system and to ward off different types of infections, especially those respiratory types of things that are happening these days. Extract or tincture form or capsule form is what I'm suggesting here. Lavender, this is good for stress and depression. It's good for burns, headaches, psoriasis, skin problems. You can use the essential oil. Some people use the flowers in tea. It's used in a lot of health and beauty or bath and beauty products, I should say. Of course, it's used in health products, but it's used in a lot of beauty products, skin products, bath products, but it can also be used internally. But it is one of those sedative or nervine types of herbs. Skullcap is another nervine or sedative type of herb. It helps you sleep. It helps you kind of get rid of any anxiety, fatigue, stress. It strengthens the heart muscle and improves circulation. It's good for headaches, hyperactivity, nervous disorders, rheumatism. It's good for muscle cramps and pain. Also good for folk who are having withdrawal symptoms from taking certain herbs. Certain drugs, Lord have mercy. but this herb is good for people who are needing to take the edge off when they're cutting out certain things, specifically barbiturates, but other things too. It could be nicotine, it could be alcohol, but it helps the body kind of calm down and kind of relax itself so that you're not feeling the effects of any kind of addiction. Nettle is another one of my all-time favorites. It's a diuretic, it's an expectorant. It gets rid of excess mucus and phlegm from the body. It's a good pain reliever. It is a tonic herb. It's really rich in minerals, especially iron, but it also has calcium and some other minerals in it as well. So it's good for anemia, arthritis, hay fever, any allergies, things like that, kidney problems, goiters, inflammation conditions, mucus conditions in the lungs. Nettle is excellent. I've personally used it, one of my favorites. Capsule form here, or maybe a tincture or extract. But if you're combining it with other things or you're doing it as a preventative, nettle in tea form is fine as well. The last one, cranesbill. This is an astringent herb. This is not one of your most popular herbs, but I think what it does is excellent and we definitely should have in our medicine chest. This helps the stomach, the intestines, the liver, the heart. Is good for diarrhea. It's good for colitis, dysentery. It's also good for any internal or external bleeding. So whether it's a wound outside of the body or whether it's some type of internal bleeding, bleeding ulcers, even uterine fibroids, things of that nature where there is bleeding, cranesbill is excellent for that. You can also use it topically in a douche for vaginal discharge. You can use it anally for hemorrhoids. It relieves hemorrhoids, especially if there's blood coming from the rectum when you are having protruding hemorrhoids and having painful bowel movements. So cranesbill is very good. Usually in tea or tincture or extract form is when you're using that or how you're using that. So these are just some of the herbs I wanted to highlight. That first page, as I mentioned before, this has several more. Use this as your reference. But if any of these things stood out to you, I would suggest kind of highlighting them, writing them on a separate page, just so that you can pay particular close attention to them, see if you can access them. And if not, going to a local herbalist or healer who can tell you a herb that's similar to what these herbs do, if you cannot find these or get access to these. So the next thing I want to talk about is homeopathic remedies. So homeopathic remedies are also natural remedies. They're not all plant-based though. So some are minerals, and there's even a few that come from like certain insects and things of that nature, but they're largely based on minerals or herbs or other trees or plants, right? And these are remedies that usually will help a situation more quickly than an herbal remedy because you take it sublingually, meaning you take it under the tongue. And so it goes into the mucous membranes in the mouth and it gets into the bloodstream quicker than if you swallow it and it gets digested and goes through your entire digestive system, okay? So these are just a little different. Usually you'll find them in little pellets or tablets. And usually it will even say on the box what it is for. There are homeopathic kits that will have multiple remedies, and usually there will be a instruction sheet that will tell you what these remedies are used for. So they're very easy to take. You don't have to really even memorize what these different remedies do. And they are highly effective. And the concept is like cures like. So in certain situations, what would cause that condition in the right dosing and in the right times, it will also cure that condition. And I think the first one is a prime example of that. Allium cepa, it comes from the onion, right? And we know onions will make us tear up, right? It'll give us, to bring forth and bring out all the mucus in the body, right? But a homeopathic remedy of this onion, this Allium cepa, this is used for certain conditions or symptoms, right, where there is watery, runny eyes, such as hay fever or the common cold, right? Or bronchitis or asthma, some of these things where there's usually nasal discharge or irritation in the nostrils, or from the eyes, or from the throat where you're having nasal drip and things of that nature. So this is for those types of symptoms, people who are having allergies, hay fever, colds, things of that nature, okay? Allium. Arnica, this also comes from a plant, the mountain daisy. This one is used for shock and trauma from an injury. This is the internal one. There's also an external one, if you see the one that says topical. And this is for when there's external pain. You've had some kind of injury from like a sprain, or you strained a muscle, or you had a bruise or something of that nature. There are Arnica creams that you apply topically. Chamomile, this comes from the chamomile or chamomile plant. It's a really pretty flower, right? This is one that helps us sleep. It's good for irritability, especially in infants who are teething or having colic. But anybody can take it, but we most often use it, or you'll find it in like teething tablets or colic formulas for babies. But it really helps to kind of settle you down, provide relief by allowing you to rest and sleep. Hypericum is also plant-based. It comes from the herb St. John's wort. This remedy is used for basically kind of like nerve pain. If you've smashed your fingers or your toes, or you have some kind of injury to your back. But this remedy is good for these kind of conditions. Ignatia, this is plant-based. This comes from the St. Ignatius bean. And this remedy is used for psychiatric conditions. So it's really great for acute grief, anxiety, and depression issues, okay? Magnesium phosphorica. This comes from the mineral magnesium. So this is good for cramps, especially menstrual cramps, but other issues too, where you know that there is a deficiency. It could be any kind of muscle cramp, not just menstrual cramps, but this will provide great relief by providing the body the mineral that it needs. Nux vomica comes from a non-poisonous nut, right? But it's called poison nut, another plant-based remedy. And this one is treating things like overeating or excessive drinking of alcohol. So people who feel like they've overindulged and they need to purge, or they may actually be vomiting and these types of things because of eating too much or drinking too much. Nux vomica is the remedy for that. Pulsatilla comes from the windflower. This is a very common remedy for children and women, but this is good for certain conditions where, again, it's sort of a calming type of thing. If the emotions are kind of out of whack or out of balance, people pleasers, people who kind of need to get acceptance and that sort of thing, Pulsatilla is for. Pulsatilla is also for other things. This handout just sort of makes mention of this. And that's the same with all of these remedies. These are not the only things that these remedies do. This is what's highlighted in this particular handout. Rustox is the poison ivy plant. And of course, it is used for treating poison ivy, but also for the flu, for arthritis, and also it's good for pain. But of course, if you come across poison ivy and you break out in the rash, this is the remedy that works for that as well. Now, this handout I will not go over. This is still about homeopathic remedies, but because I wanted to give, and the, I'm trying to see if I had that on this bookshelf. It might be at my office. The book for homeopathic remedies, I always look over on this bookshelf as if all of my stuff is here, and it's not. But there are thousands and thousands of homeopathic remedies, and books that you will find on it. it can be very, very detailed and intricate. So I really had to search for sort of these abbreviated lists or handouts with these homeopathic remedies. But just know there are so many homeopathic remedies, and even the brief explanations of these here are small, small, small compared to all of the things that each remedy will do, right? So this one is just for your reference in terms of other homeopathic remedies that you can use for burns, for bruises, for eye injuries, for insect bites, things of that nature. So you'll have this. Heat stroke is a big one. And so these are for your reference, okay? Now this next one, we're going to go into talking about essential oils. So now essential oils are pretty much an extraction, or I should say the process of distilling the oils from different flowering plants in order to use for different types of aromatherapy. So we know that aromas from the essential oils, they promote certain moods and states. And so we know that we use it in different ways to heal the body, to bring balance back into the body, whether it's just smelling the scent or the aroma itself through like a diffuser or in a spray bottle. But we know we can mix it into our oils and use it as a massage oil. We know that we can make it into a bath product, add it to bath salts or sea salts. We can add it to sea salts and such, where we might add it to our bath or our foot baths. We may add the essential oils to different skin or hair products to enhance the effectiveness, not just the smell of those products. So there are many uses for essential oils. And this right side, left side of the handout kind of gives you those types of uses: massage oil, bath, douche, mouthwash, inhalant as a compress, so on and so forth. So there are many different ways that we can use essential oils. This is a very condensed, compressed handout here. However, it has a lot of information. So that's why I included this, even though it's not a great copy. I like how it shows what the essential oil, kind of giving you a description of the aroma of it, and then tells you what blends well with the oil, and then what the healing uses of the oils are. Okay, so I think this is a very good handout. Pay very close attention to each of the parts of this handout. It even gives you ideas of what carrier oils to use to dilute the essential oils. And that's important because essential oils are highly concentrated extractions, right, of plants. And so you should dilute them before adding them to your skin directly. And if you're adding it, of course, to a bath, the water is going to dilute it. If you're adding it to some salts, it is going to get diluted. But if you are trying to use it directly on your hair, on your skin, you know, on any part of your body, you want to dilute it. And so a carrier oil is what you would dilute it with. So hazelnut, almond, grapeseed, olive, sesame, avocado oils, apricot oils, not canola oil. I really would not recommend that. But there are many different what we call carrier oils, which are vegetable-based oils that you would just dilute the essential oils with. So let's talk a little bit about some of my favorite essential oils, okay? So, and I'll have trouble kind of skipping over some of these, right? Because I think so many of them are so wonderful. But let's talk about cinnamon. Cinnamon, we know, has a warm, spicy, smoky aroma, right? But we know also, and we know that we like the taste of cinnamon, but in the essential oil, we know that it is helpful and has healing benefits in terms of being an antidepressant, an antiviral, an antibiotic. It fights infection, colds, arthritis, rheumatism. And then if we're talking spiritually or psychiatrically, or I'm trying to avoid saying psychically, because some people get weirded out by that, but it enhances your psychic awareness, but we'll just say your spiritual awareness here, right? But we know that it promotes certain energy, right? So it promotes love and physical energy and prosperity and mood. So a lot of spiritualists will use cinnamon in different incense and different spiritual baths, things of that nature. So cinnamon is one of my favorite. Clary Sage is another one. This is sort of a musky, floral, nutty aroma, but it's good for acting as a nerve tonic. It's good for muscular fatigue, anxiety, throat, PMS, fertility, insomnia, stress. And we also know, again, spiritually, it balances the mind and emotions. It has a euphoric effect, so it can help promote dreams, and it also helps calm panic and paranoia, okay? Clary Sage is often used for people who want to meditate and just connect on a spiritual level. So it is used during meditation and that sort of thing. Another favorite of mine is clove. We know that clove has a rich, warm, spicy aroma. Toothaches, this is something you wouldn't dilute it. You can just add directly, you know, on a cotton ball and add directly on that tooth pain or that tooth that is hurting. And it's excellent for toothaches. It's also great for warts. It's good for muscle pain, colds, diarrhea, chest infection. It has antiseptic properties. And this is a healing and protective oil. So it helps enhance memory, courage, and visualizing. So again, the italicized part will give you all of the kind of spiritual, psychic kind of components to it. Eucalyptus, not one of my favorites. The smell is a little off-putting to me, but a lot of people love it. But what we do know about the eucalyptus is it's great for colds, flu, bronchitis, opening the nasal passages and the airways. It has antiseptic properties, antibiotic properties. It's good for muscle aches and pains. I use it in my herbal liniment for aches and pains. And it's also uplifting. So it's good for mental exhaustion. We know that it heals grief and sorrow, kind of opens up other spiritual pathways, and kind of helps purify or cleanse negative energies out as well. So it has a lot of wonderful healing properties. I just don't love the aroma. And sometimes we have to just use those that are not just what smell good to us, but what will have some healing energies for us. And it may be a matter of mixing it a little bit with maybe some lemon essential oil or some peppermint or something of that nature. We know that frankincense has a lot of spiritual properties, but we also know physically it's good for mental fatigue, arthritis, aging, skin, respiratory problems. It also helps with dreaming. We know a lot of people use it for meditation and allows for and promotes inner guidance and soothing the spirit. And there's so many others. Ginger is one of those I highly recommend having on hand, just as ginger was listed in the section where we talked about herbs. The essential oil, I think, is also good to have on hand. It's good for arthritis, rheumatism, muscle pain, and strain. It's good for digestion, fever, colds, and tension, okay? I mentioned peppermint earlier, but definitely using this in a diffuser, I think, can be really healing. It's good for headaches, nausea, digestion, muscle pain, sinuses, shock, gas. It's purifying, it's inspiring, it cleanses negative energy, helps one focus. Lemongrass, another one that's not my favorite in terms of the smell, but a lot of people love it, has a lot of healing benefits, has a lemony, straw-like green component, but kind of I don't even think it really smells like lemon, but it's a bizarre kind of aroma, right? You either hate it or you love it. But it's really healing. It's good for being a really good nerve tonic. It's good for digestion, infections, for acne. It's a diuretic, so it's good for getting rid of excess water and fluids in the body. It's anti-parasitic, and it's a good skin tonic. We also know that lemongrass is a good mosquito repellent as well. So it has some really good healing properties. Neroli, I'd like to point out as well. This is not a very common essential oil, but has a lot of healing properties. It's an antidepressant and it's a sedative. It's good for insomnia, shock, nerves, skin care, scars, PMS, and also good for hypertension or high blood pressure. So this is also a really good essential oil to have on hand. And yeah, I'll resist focusing on others because we have rolled right on through. And so I won't talk more about essential oils, but same thing. Go through and figure out which ones of these oils really resonate with you and that you really feel could be helpful, and see if you're able to get them. Yeah, so fibroids is a difficult one. One of the questions is about fibroids. Uterine fibroids, very common here in America. I imagine in other places. Black women or women of color are 5 times more likely than any other ethnicity to get fibroid tumors. It's an estrogen dominant condition. So you would basically want to focus on diet with that. And so it's very hard because it would really be one of those situations where I don't just across the board suggest or talk about people being vegetarian just because, but this is one of those situations where that's one of the best ways, because a lot of the meats the body is taking in and processing as estrogen, and it just helps the fibroids and stuff to grow. But traditionally, there have been a lot of herbs that have been used for fibroids. As my mind goes blank, haha. Chase tree berry, Damiana, and talking about homeopathics, the homeopathic thuja, THUJA, that's been used for fibroids. There's a company called Crystal Star that makes a fibroid releasing supplement. I forget what it's called. Fibro release or something. You'll be able to tell from the name, but it has a good combination of different herbs for fibroids. Yeah, chamomile is wonderful, and it does, and it grows wild. If you have chamomile in your yard, then I'm sure you're getting a beautiful sight. Welcome, if this is the first time. Stephen from, who's that, Uganda? Welcome, welcome, welcome everybody, especially if it's your first time. Oh yeah, all right. My brother from Ghana, first time, welcome. Aquaba, I should say, Liberia. All right, thank you, thank you. Okay, so I don't know, let me scroll through a little bit more, see if we got some actual questions. These might have been from Mr. Mapendera. Yeah, all right, so I think there weren't a lot of questions. And a lot of people left as usual, but I will get over it, right? So superfoods. Basically superfoods, and I definitely won't go through, this list specifically. It's a lot. I will just kind of mention some so that you'll know. But basically a superfood is a highly nutritive food that is full of nutrition. So a single food that you can find multiple vitamins and minerals in it. So these are important when you're choosing what foods to eat, especially if you're trying to kind of compress your diet, excluding things that are not really good for you. You want to keep it simple and clean. You want to eat healthy as possible. You want to pick these foods that will be life-giving and life-sustaining. And that means that they are void of kind of junks, fillers, preservatives, oils, sugars, things of that nature, but full of vitamins and minerals, okay? that is going to give us higher levels of energy, giving us more ability for our body to build our immune system and fight off infections. So superfoods are those foods. These are the foods that basically, you know, they're no-brainers. They have so many nutrients that it's like, oh, of course this is a superfood. Okay, yeah, of course this is good for you, right? And so among the list, and there's two lists here in this handout section. So one focuses on foods and one is more like seeds and powders and things that people who are into, you know, the smoothies and liquid meals and things like that, right? So in terms of these foods, let's run through the list. So the top 10 superfoods from our first handout here: almonds, broccoli rabi, avocados, raw milk, wheatgrass, salmon, flax seeds, blueberries, cinnamon, and sweet potatoes. Now, again, you have this handout. If you don't, again, you can always email me. I'll post my email as I always do, and I'll send you the handouts. But hopefully you're joining us and you're part of the group, or you joined us before and you have the handouts. The handouts are not new. So if you've been sent the handouts previously, these are the same handouts, but you have this as reference. But basically all of these foods are high in a number of different vitamins and minerals. And these are foods that will help the body ward off disease, stay healthy, boost the immune system, so that it can be prepared to fight any kind of disease-causing microorganisms that are introduced to it. So now, this next handout, so the previous list, right? These talked about benefits of certain foods. This is going to list other types of quote unquote foods that you wouldn't necessarily eat by themselves, or you may, but that generally people are adding to cereals or smoothies or shakes or things like that. So of this list are your acai berries, right? This comes out of South America, very popular these days. Goji berries, this is a China or Asian berry. Cocoa powder or cacao. And surely we have cocoa in Africa, so I don't know where they're stating here in this handout where they're crediting it coming from. I mean, I know it's other places as well. Seaweed, we know comes from the rich, beautiful sea, and it's full of minerals. And then we have chia seeds. This comes out of Mexico. We have mangosteen. I think that's the, no. And we know, I think that's South American. Where's mangosteen? Oh, Southeast Asia. Mangosteen comes from Southeast Asia. And then we have the maca powder. Okay, and so this comes from the Andes. And so these are foods, again, same concept. They are packed full of nutrients. Most people adding these things to protein shakes and things of that nature. So in these last few minutes, I think there was one more question. Yeah, so if I was doing, okay, I switched to one of the questions. It's asking about peppermint. How well does it enhance the body against skin infection and colds? I think it's great for colds. Skin infections, probably the essential oils that I prefer for skin. Frankincense, or maybe even sandalwood, even better. Those are great for the skin as well, and even lavender. These are essential oils that are great for skin infections. But yes, definitely peppermint is good. It does, I make a rosemary peppermint foot cream that is good for just keeping the feet in good condition. Of course, it gives that cooling, healing effect, but also because it has that healing ability, it can also heal the skin as well. So usually in a cream or even adding drops of the peppermint into your hand along with some carrier oil, whether it's some shea butter, cocoa butter, some almond oil or whatever, and then rubbing it into the skin. But because it can be very invigorating, you wouldn't necessarily put peppermint on all parts of your skin. So it can be, so you wouldn't put it on sensitive areas, for example. So let's talk about these common ailments and diseases, meaning absence of ease. We're not saying that we're treating or healing any particular disease, right? We're only talking about keeping the body in balance and as healthy as possible, right? So these are just common conditions that historically certain herbs and things have been used for, right? So fever. So does anyone remember any of the herbs or essential oils that are good for fever? Yeah. Yes, hope you join us next time. So Sister Denise, I've sent them before. I don't think I think you have them all. It's nothing new. Today are not new handouts. But I would like you to check and see your old emails for me to make sure you don't have it already. But if you don't have them, then just say, I don't have them, can I resend them? But for fever, we have talked already today about ginger being great for fever. But we talked about many others, but ginger is usually my go-to when my children have fevers, or especially when they were younger and they had fevers, a ginger bath or even a ginger foot bath, or making a strong ginger tea and then putting a cloth in it and doing like a compress, or sort of washing their body with sort of a ginger infused cloth, right? So we know that fevers help that way. Pain, we've talked about Arnica, we've talked about Hypericum, homeopathic remedies that are great for pain. Some of the herbs that are good for pain. Remember, Valerian was one of my faves for that. So those are some options for pain. Constipation, aloe vera. We talked about how widely aloe vera grows throughout the world, but it is excellent for constipation. It is known to be a mild laxative, all right? And that first list, that kind of 2-column handout also has many other herbs listed, and there's several other things listed on that page for constipation. Senna, Cascara sagrada, slippery elm, there are many others. Diarrhea. Diarrhea is great. There are many, diarrhea is not great, that's not what I meant to say. But there are many herbs and supplements that are great for diarrhea. Of the list that we discussed, the activated charcoal is really good for diarrhea. And any other bulking agents. You want not really spicy, saucy foods when experiencing diarrhea. You want to keep it really simple, and you want to do dry carbs, crackers, dry toast, really plain, bland foods that won't kind of run right through your body. Even raw vegetables and things can sometimes exacerbate diarrhea. Upset stomach, we talked about ginger today, ginger and even aloe vera. These are 2 options for upset stomach. There are several things we talked about in terms of cold and flu, right? So I think we mentioned echinacea and golden seal, if you remember. These are things that are great for cold and flu. There was a homeopathic remedy, the Allium, right, that dealt with cold and flu symptoms. Sinus infections, allergies, hay fever. Another one of my favorite herbs, we talked about nettle, the herb that is rich in a lot of minerals like iron and calcium. One of its main health benefits is with allergies and hay fever and sinuses, right? So hopefully you're remembering these things as I'm going along, right? PMS, we talked about the homeopathic remedy, magnesium phos. This is good for any kind of menstrual cramps or any kind of muscle cramps. So surely the that homeopathic would be good for PMS. High blood pressure, we also talked about. There were a couple of options. There were some essential oils that I referenced in terms of high blood pressure. There were a couple of herbs. If you remember, garlic was one. Valerian was another. We talked about the essential oil of neroli, right? So I hope that we remember these. Diabetes, one of my favorite, really aromatic, really tasty herbs or spices of cinnamon, right? We mentioned cinnamon. Cinnamon is good for diabetes, among other things, of course. So this is what I wanted to just recap. These are conditions, right, that you just from these handouts on herbs and homeopathics and essential oils, you now know things to do for these very common conditions that our people have. So whether it's yourself, whether it's a loved one, and of course, you know, this is not me recommending a particular regimen, but this is providing you the information so that you know where to look, where to do further research, and how to, you know, take control and take your own power back, right, in terms of regaining health. So, okay. All right, so there were just some comments, I think. Yeah, so thank you. And if you need the PDF, my email that I just typed in, you can send that and request that. And so I think I answered all the questions. I hope you enjoyed this presentation on herbs and homeopathics, essential oils and superfoods. And if you have any other questions that you didn't get to type in today, you can always, especially if you are in the class, the WhatsApp class or group, I should say, feel free to post questions about that. Any of the reading materials, what we discussed this week or previous weeks, all of that's fine. And so thank you for listening in. Next week, we will talk about effective ways of handling stress, or effective ways of relieving or releasing stress. So I look forward to seeing you next week. And as always, I bid you good health and peace. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Yvonne.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. We really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yes, up next you have Dr. Wright. Dr.
Yes.
Wright, can you hear us?
Yes,
Okay.
and you'll see me momentarily. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, because I'm going to try to use a mic this time. Okay, so welcome everyone. You'll see me in about 1 minute approximately. This week, as you saw in the readings, we'll be discussing Pan-Africanism, and you have your first, let me get my mic. You have your first materials on the history of Pan-Africanism. On the history of Pan-Africanism that was posted. It was one chapter, and it was a simple quote that some of you should have had the opportunity to delve into and deduce. And I will break that down along with the early history of Pan-Africanism covered in that chapter. Now, I do want to say a word about this chapter because it's twofold. This chapter is from a book called Booker T. Washington in Africa, The Making of a Pan-Africanist. It is a book that I wrote. However, the only reason I used this particular chapter was because of the simple fact that I know for sure there is a sort of whirlwind expose in it of all the places in the diaspora that would have been participants in the emergence of the concept and the definition of Pan-Africanism. So that's the only reason why we are using this book in particular that I happen to write. And I'm going to share my screen shortly as well. So I just want to get my mic and camera adjusted. Nonetheless, so that is what we'll do today. And it's in line with what you all read this week. Okay, so Yvonne, can I might actually share my screen before you see me. I have permission to share my screen?
Yes.
Yes, yes. Okay, hold on one second then. Let me just get to this really quickly. One moment, folks. Sorry about that. I had it open. Okay. And I actually should be looking at this from you all from the WhatsApp, but so that you can see where it is. But I'll do that later as well. Okay. All right. So this was the chapter you read. Now, I side note, I didn't forget that you watched the film, A Journey of Man, A Genetic Odyssey. Can everybody see here, chapter 2?
Yes.
Booker T. Okay, great. Because there's times where I've shared the screen and then I find out that I'm just lecturing and no one can see what I see. So that is the chapter you were reading this week. It's called Booker T. Washington, Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanists. But what I was saying right before that is I wanted to make sure that we don't forget in some big or small way to discuss the journey of man, a genetic odyssey, because I have a very clear objective and motivation for introducing a film like that into this conversation about Black people, African people, and the world, really, okay? And so I wanted to not deprive this class of what I actually do in university spaces, in the sense that I always enter the conversation with an understanding and bringing everyone up to speed in that understanding that to be human means to be African. And yes, Blackness is a natural characteristic of human beings, okay? So we will, I will, actually, I just really want to hear your comments on that. And then I'll answer and clarify anything, but I will highlight some major points that were covered in the film, okay? And there's also one other thing that I'm going to do. I'll go over some of the items in the syllabus as well. So this is Booker T. Washington, Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanists. And what it seeks to do, what this chapter in essence does, is revisit that moment in time when Pan-Africanism was a budding concept in the world. It hasn't always existed, okay? It actually emerges from the diaspora, the African diaspora in the Americas specifically. And that's not to take anything away from America. Africa. It's just simply that African people in that part of the world were organizing around this issue and collaborated with people on the African continent and elsewhere around this understanding that we had a common experience with regard to colonialism and oppression. And so I want to start out with a quote that's at the beginning of the chapter. And I want to begin with this quote at the beginning of the chapter, which was actually, I meant to like section it out. It's in the other class like that, but I wanted to section it out and just have you look at the quote and you know, delve into it. That being said, here it is at the beginning of the chapter. And I will read it. It is written by Booker T. Washington, this quote. And it comes from a book called The Story of the Negro, The Rise of the Race from Slavery. And it was published in 1901 or 1909. He wrote in 1901, it wouldn't be published until 1909. And it essentially is about the story of humanity, African people. But Washington calls that African. But he seeks to tell the story of the African person from the continent to the United States and through enslavement to freedom. And so the book was really overlooked because he was not talking about social and political rights in the United States, but who we were culturally, okay? And how it contributed to our struggle in the Western Hemisphere. And so he wrote, there is, however, a tie which few white men can understand, which binds the American Negro to the African Negro, which unites the Black man of Brazil and the Black man of Liberia, which is constantly drawing into closer relations all the scattered African peoples, whether they are in the old world or the new. I have rarely met in America anyone of my race who did not, in one way or another, show a deep interest in everything connected with Africa. The millions of Negroes in America are almost as much interested, for example, in the future of Liberia and Abyssinia, which is Ethiopia, as they are in their own country. There is always a peculiar and scarcely definable bond that binds one Black man to another Black man, whether in Africa, Jamaica, Haiti, or the United States. And I have seldom read a more Pan-Africanist statement in understanding our common struggle and our common plight in this world than this, right? He touches on all of the major continents, Africa, the North and South America, which really actually is one continent. But then the nationalities in terms of, and of course, two of the only independent African nations, or two of the only African nations never colonized by Europeans, right? He mentions them, Liberia and Abyssinia. So I've seldom read a more Pan-Africanist statement in terms of recognizing our common thread and our common bond in the world. And so this is sort of what frames the chapter in the sense that what would bring African people together in the Western Hemisphere would be essentially, not even the Western Hemisphere, in the world, would be this common experience under oppression. Another way to say this type of oppression could be colonialism, imperialism, or in general, white supremacy and culture, which had emerged since, and I don't want you to think it's been forever, it's since at least 1492 onward, okay? So Europeans have not always dominated anything, okay? This is a very recent thing in human history, meaning we have been on the earth 200 to 300,000 years. We, meaning African people, Europeans have only been on the earth 7,000 to 8,000 years. And in the last 500 years, they have come out of Europe and engaged in what would be a very distinctive perpetuation of their anti-human culture. So for the purpose of exploitation and survival of themselves and their barren origins, which which would be Europe. Okay, I don't think that's a secret for this crowd that Europe is resource poor. Okay, if you don't know that, you will find that out in the course of this seminar. So this frames that conversation about how the world's people, particularly African people, come together to protect themselves from racism, exploitation, and in the definition of Pan-Africanism, bare bone definitions that asserted here, against exploitation and oppression, right? That would be a common characteristic if you read the majority of the chapter. But let's delve into the historical context. So yes, Booker T. Washington is a very unlikely figure to use as an entry point for the conversation of Pan-Africanism. However, I do want to say, while he is the unlikeliest, he is also the most qualified in the instances, as you will see as we go on in the course. He is not known as a Pan-Africanist. That's more like Du Bois and then, of course, Marcus Garvey. But he would act as a Pan-Africanist. And I'm going to define what acting as a Pan-Africanist, acting as an agent of Pan-Africanism would mean, okay? So he is an unlikely figure because he is publicly known as the accommodationist. And I don't want to make this about Booker T. Washington. We have to understand that he is a proponent, but the ideology is larger than him or any other singular proponent, right? They will all make contributions to Pan-Africanism, or put it this way, Pan-Africanism, true Pan-Africanism wants you to make a contribution to African people, Black people in some way. The very definition, as you come to see, is to protect African people and Black people, okay, which are one and the same. So please don't write in the comments like, why is she saying African and Black? Because yes, we have people who identify as Black, and that is legitimate because they are. However, Blackness is a racial category. African, we can accept that as a cultural identification because there are many, many, many different ethnicities and cultures in the larger African family tree, right? So, so it's not one or the other. Sorry about that, guys. My alarm keeps going off. All right, so although Booker T. Washington's Pan-Africanist activity played out in the shadows of his life, he was perhaps one of the most impactful Pan-Africanists of the 20th century, typically excluded from the canon of Pan-Africanists and the history of Pan-Africanism. He played a role in the early history of the movement. He had a unique form of Pan-Africanism that emphasized practice over rhetoric and theory. Between 1895 and 1915, Booker T. Washington underwent a transformation that was fostered by his relationships with African nationalists, Pan-Africanists, and his direct role in African affairs. That part is important because what this book actually talks about is Washington's ideological transformation. And what we are involved in this course is, yes, an ideological transformation of our ambassadors, right? That will help you, will assist you in actually doing this work that you do for I Love Black People, okay? So that is a key component of Pan-Africanism, okay? Meaning this transformation that he underwent, this ideological transformation. Let me say it another way. He went through a positive transformation in how he saw himself, how he saw other African people, and how he understood or came to understood that we are actually connected. Okay. And so that transformation I speak of is precisely that, an ideological transformation as a result of a number of experiences, events, exposure, contact, relationships. I'm going to discuss that in a little further down. Relationships transformed Booker T. Washington. He was in contact with African nationalists on the continent of Africa, and therefore they shared information. They had a dialectical relationship going on, which facilitated his understanding. He's not on the African continent. He's not in Europe, where African people have migrated. He's in the United States. And how does he know about the reality, the shared reality of African people, of Black people? He knows this through communication with them, right? And this fosters change in him, in much in the same way that we are doing that, okay? Meaning everything we do in this course is really on a continuum. The study of the subject matter, the strategies and the tactics, and yes, the relationships, how we come together in order to learn from each other about our condition and how to better remedy it, right? So all of those things, that particular statement in there encapsulates sort of what Washington did, not sort of what he did or what he underwent, and what you will undergo, really, or what this course is meant to help you undergo in terms of your role and how you are going to contribute to our plight, right? Our Pan-Africanism, or how we are going to contribute to protecting, essentially, in a very direct way, Black people, right? Isn't that what this is about? So he had a unique form of Pan-Africanism that emphasized practice of rhetoric and theory. Between 1895 and 1915, Booker T. Washington underwent a transformation that was fostered by his relationships with African nationalists, Pan-Africanists, and his direct role in African affairs, which we will talk about. However, his early desire to learn and connect with Africa and its people was rooted in his childhood, and that sentiment eventually facilitated his development. Therefore, this chapter identifies the origins of Washington's Pan-Africanist sentiment, establishes his role in the history of early Pan-Africanism, and revisits his intimate relationships with two of the most important Pan-Africanists of his time. And those two will be W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey. But here you go. I cover who Booker T. Washington is briefly in here, and I'm not going to get into that. You can actually read it. But he makes his connection to Africa. He understands that his mother is an African person, and therefore he is too. Unlike some others at this time, he feels no reason to elevate any other part of his ancestry. And so his primary concern and preoccupation is with African and African people, because they are the people that produce his mother. Okay. And he, yes, holds his mother, as most African people do, hold their mother in high esteem. Okay. You know, you don't mess with mother. So well, most of us know you don't mess with mother. That's like what Sheikh Anta Diop talks about in the cultural continuity of Black Africa. You don't negate mother. So he holds his mother in high esteem, and that really facilitates his pursuit of knowledge concerning Africa. And he talks about the various ethnicities that he understands and all of that. So, but here we come to this moment in time where he is contacted by a person called Henry Sylvester Williams. And side note, yes, this is important for you to know. If you use the word Pan-Africanism, you should know where it came from, right? From whence it came. You should know that. And this is the story of how the word, the concept, the idea of Pan-Africanism comes into fruition as not only just a concept, but Washington would call it a movement, and I will call it an ideology in term that we all actually for at least 100 plus years now have been organizing around. And I think that it's important to know Pan-Africanism is not just a feeling, okay? And we'll establish this in the course of this study. But if you can, well, you were sharing the chapter, so you'll see it here. But here is the story of how this comes together. So it is with this level of developing consciousness that Booker T. Washington engaged the world. Shortly before the turn of the 20th century, he was formally exposed to the philosophy of Pan-Africanism, much in the same way as the rest of the world, through the coining of the phrase by the Secretary of the African Association, Henry Sylvester Williams. Henry Sylvester Williams is out of Trinidad. Some of you may know that. On behalf of the African Association, Williams wrote to Booker T. Washington for the first time in September of 1898 to solicit his support in their efforts to organize for the benefit of African people. He extended membership to Washington while enlisting his assistance in promoting the organization in the US. He wrote, "I take it you are alive to the necessity of a general union amongst the children and descendants of Ham, as it would tend to create a respect for us, which he believed did not exist." Washington agreed and was eager to promote the organization. The objective of the African Association, as described by Henry Sylvester Williams, was to respond to the need for unity amongst African people in order to garner respect in the world. The organization would make representation in cases of oppression affecting our people wherever found. Okay, see that? The objective of the African Association, as described by Henry Sylvester Williams, was to respond to the need for unity amongst African people in order to garner respect in the world. The organization would make representations in cases of oppression affecting our people wherever found. During the latter part of 1898, the association began planning the first Pan-African conference in order to advance their aims. In June, and that's a historic moment, right? So 2 years before 1900, in 1898, this organization that Henry Sylvester Williams, who is the Secretary of the African Association, he is born in Trinidad, resides in London for this purpose, and he is planning a conference to happen in the year of 1900 that would address the condition of African people globally, right? The organization would make representations in cases of oppression affecting our people wherever found. During the latter part of 1898, the association began planning the first Pan-African conference in order to advance their aims. In June of 1899, Williams wrote Booker T. Washington from London regarding the conference and enclosed a circular requesting that Washington or a representative of his choice present a paper on lynching in the US. Washington accepted the invitation and promised to make it known as widely as possible. He not only promoted the conference through the Black press, he outlined the agenda and deemed it a very important movement. So Booker T. Washington is one of the first individuals to discuss Pan-Africanism as not just simply a word, an idea, but something he saw at that moment as a movement that was being initiated. Okay, so there's recognition of that. And he does that. So I'll go on, and I'm not going to read much to you. I just want to highlight some important points. He promoted the conference through the Black press. He outlined the agenda and deemed it a very important movement on the horizon. The organization's desire to create a body that would foster unification amongst African people internationally was a much needed and progressive endeavor, according to Booker T. Washington, and therefore worthy of his support. Washington did not hesitate to promote the conference. Before leaving London, he quickly wrote and mailed several letters to editors of Black newspapers in the US. One letter he sent on July of 1899 was addressed to the editor of the Indianapolis Freeman. Washington's objective was to promote the first Pan-African Conference to the masses of African people in America. In his letter to the editor, he noted the British government's plans to hold an international event where representatives from various countries would gather in London. He explained how the first Pan-African Conference could benefit from the assembling of African people already taking place in England. Now, so we know about the first Pan-African Conference. It would happen in 1899. Booker T. Washington would be a participant on the plenary level and a promoter of the conference. However, he would not ultimately attend the conference. Then we have Henry Sylvester Williams, who is in the African Association, from Trinidad, based in London. And then there's W.E.B. Du Bois, who we will begin to talk about. And Marcus Garvey comes later. Du Bois would actually attend the first Pan-African Conference. He and Washington would actually be involved as collaborators and as members of the plenary session or participants in the plenary session of the first Pan-African Conference. Let me be clear, I'm going to address Du Bois and Washington's relationship for about 3 to 4 minutes, but I'm not going to belabor the point. However, at this moment in time, Du Bois, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Booker T. Washington are aligned with each other. We know, some of us who know the U.S. history, we know that it is basically, how would you say, propagandized that Booker T. Washington and Du Bois were arch enemies and all of this stuff. That's not really factual for the most part. However, and I know that because I've read the personal papers. However, for the first 9 years before that period began, they had a close relationship. So Du Bois and Booker T. Washington are, in this context, aligned with each other in support of the first Pan-African Conference. Washington would not attend, and it was not because of Du Bois. Du Bois would attend, and he would play a very important role in Pan-Africanism going forward, okay? He would be the youngest person in attendance at that conference, the first Pan-African Conference. And he, by 1919, would be the only person living who ever attended that conference. And that's an important point, especially since I'm saying 1919, because that's when the congresses would begin. So Du Bois is a very important and key figure in the history and development of the concept of Pan-Africanism. He actually brings it from this small level of the first Pan-African Conference to a larger context on the African continent and to the attention in many ways of African leadership. So you will see all of that play out in this chapter. Let me skip because I want to just get to this part right here. Pan-Africanism is a concept, once again, that is a collective, I guess you could say, ideation amongst African people, meaning we all had ideas and experiences that facilitated an understanding for the need to come together, have unity for the purpose of protecting ourselves. Okay? So having the condition of being oppressed and exploited throughout the world is the impetus in understanding that we need to create something that protects all of us. This should resonate with you as members or ambassadors in this organization, because you are actually, I want to stress to you, you are actually on a continuum in this history. Okay, I love Black people. It's not the first time we're doing this. It's the first time you're leveraging technology to protect us. But it's not the first time African people, Black people, we're trying to organize to protect ourselves. Okay? I love Black people is distinctively Pan-Africanist with that vision and mission. But it is not the first time. And that's not a minus to I love Black people or any other organization. It should fortify you in understanding that you are actually not only doing the work of our people in the sense that we need to be protected, we need to be insulated, but you are continuing the work of our ancestors. You are continuing the work of our people, of our culture, in the sense that you have not forgotten, the conditions are the same, and we are referencing our ancestors who engaged in this work as a method of looking at problems in the past to help us solve this ongoing problem in the present, right? So it's important to understand that we're not reinventing the wheel. We study the past so that we can come up with problem-solving methodologies that could help us solve contemporary problems, right? So Pan-Africanism is in many ways the proposed solution to our problem. Unity for the purpose of eradicating oppression and exploitation will be the bare bones definition that emerges as a result of the first Pan-African Conference. But just to give you an understanding once again of how broad and collective, how there was such a consensus on this need to organize for the purpose of addressing our conditions, we'll look here to see how many people over time, how many African people over time scattered around the world were talking about the same thing, okay? And recalling our history and recalling, what many believe is without a doubt, a righteous struggle. Prior to the first Pan-African Conference, 19th and early 20th century Pan-Africanism in the US was espoused and practiced by individuals like Bishop Henry McNeill Turner, Martin Delaney, Edward Blyden, Henry Highland Garnett, and Alexander Crummell. But as early as 1829, David Walker's appeal reflected on the history of African civilizations and made a connection between those in Africa and Africans scattered abroad. His appeal not only aimed to challenge the institution of slavery, but to educate the masses on African history and culture. Pan-Africanists amongst the African population in the Caribbean included the initiator of the first Pan-African Conference, Henry Sylvester Williams of Trinidad, Marcus Garvey's mentor, and we're going to talk about Marcus Garvey coming up, J. Robert Love, and Dr. J. Albert Thorne from Barbados. But decades prior to their emergence, the Haitian Revolution occurred and bolstered Pan-African consciousness in the diaspora as well. Haiti would produce Benito Sylvain and Antonin Furman, both whom met Booker T. Washington in 1897 and attended the first Pan-African Conference in 1900. Out of Haiti came a wing of Pan-Africanists who created literary discourse on diasporic philosophies on Africa. The African population in Haiti produced Jean Prince Mars and Louis Joseph, who repeatedly explained that Haiti was the embodiment of the irresistible force of a united Africa. And I'll explain why he said that. Pan-Africanism had a dialectical characteristic to it, which allowed historic events like the Haitian Revolution to produce a response and rise in consciousness amongst African people internationally. Similarly, in 1896, the Ethiopian victory over Italian imperialist forces in the Battle of Ottawa also bolstered the connection between diasporic Africans and those on the continent. The social climate and consciousness of the African diaspora in the Western Hemisphere and throughout the world produced two of the most prolific Pan-Africanists, W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey. Each of these men had important relationships and exchanges with Booker T. Washington. Marcus Garvey's relationship with Washington would open the door, both literally and figuratively, to the first mass organization of the African world through the Universal Negro Improvement Association. However, Washington's relationship with Du Bois would be inconsequential to the progress of Pan-Africanism. The relationship between Washington, the apparent accommodationist, and Du Bois, the Pan-Africanist scholar activist, has shaped African American social and political history in the US for at least a century. Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Marcus Garvey would all function differently as Pan-Africanists. The methods they employed vary, but like previous Pan-Africanists, they all had one singular objective beyond unity, which was to advance the plight of African people in the face of oppression. So, that is the crux. And I'm gonna, let me see, take this off of and let you see me. Can you see me? That is the crux of, okay. That is the crux of, sorry, everyone. That's the crux of understanding the bare bones concept of Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism would be, in many ways, an emerging concept that was embraced by many because of the common condition of African people. I don't want to get sidetracked. Actually, I won't even get that deep into it. I don't want to get sidetracked with Booker T. Washington and Du Bois and all of that today. But what I want to emphasize is the fact that, and I'm going to go back to screen sharing actually, but what I wanted to emphasize was the fact that this thing called Pan-Africanism truly comes about out of necessity. Okay, a necessity to organize around the common and collective condition of African people. And so that is what this taps into, this particular history. It gives you an understanding of how this came about. Haiti, very important point in the history of Pan-Africanism. Haiti is referred to as the irresistible force of a united Africa. Why would that be? Because what happens in the Western Hemisphere, in the Caribbean, is that Haiti, after fighting the French, the British, the US, consecutively in a number of wars leading to their independence, Haiti is sort of a microcosm of Africa in the sense that we are coming from various points in the African continent, brought to the Western Hemisphere in the same way that all of us have been through the transatlantic slave trade, all of us at that period, right? And not by our own volition or design, okay? So that being the case, not choosing, no agency in choosing. So you have ethnically probably a full representation of all the peoples that were touched on the continent by the transatlantic slave trade. Diversity and ethnicity, or ethnic diversity, existed. That being said, Haiti would fight a revolution that would lead to its independence. And because we have no other titles to invoke at that moment, we can only talk about African people as they are, African people who have been enslaved in the Western Hemisphere. Haiti, in fact, is the first independent African nation in the Western Hemisphere, and would be a stronghold against slavery. I might show a clip of Kwame Ture talking about Haiti and what Haiti truly was in the context of the world at that moment in time. It's very important to understand, because everywhere in the world there was slavery, except for Haiti. So while the rest of the world, particularly the Western Hemisphere, is engaging in a racial slavery, Haiti is saying, you make it to Haiti as an African person, you are free. No slavery in Haiti. And yes, the first and only independent African nation in the Western Hemisphere. Major. So in other words, so yes, there's a reference to Haiti as the irresistible force of a united Africa. But later down the line, more importantly, Pan-Africanism, as it meets its heights, as it meets its climax, I guess you can say, in terms of our ideals and our ideas, has its highest expression on the African continent. Not just as one independent African nation, as Nkrumah would start to talk about, and once Ghana is independent, but as continental unity, unity of a continent, and not just unity of a continent, but unity of the most powerful continent on earth, right? The most without dispute. Okay, just for those who want to challenge that, the reason why I'm saying that, then and now, largest population on earth, or one of the largest populations on earth, then and now, the holder of the bulk of the world's resources. I can't say then and now the fastest growing entrepreneurship, but also major contributor to the Western world in human resources, right? Human beings, literally. And today, I don't know at that time, but today, youngest population on earth. And I'll state again, concentration of the world, or a bulk of the world's resources concentrated on the equator, with massive concentration in the Congo and the 9 surrounding countries. So yes, then and now, Africa, very important. And so Pan-Africanism, as it comes out into the world, will find its highest expression. So think of Haiti and the assertion and the defeat, yes, the defeat of slavery in Haiti as a micro level for what we want to happen on a macro level. And side note, yes, this is why Haiti is punished so brutally to this day, because of this particular history, because of its stand against the Western world, and all the European armies that it would defeat. So it's amazing. But it also is an inspiration for what can happen on the African continent in terms of continental unification and the continued struggle for liberation. So let me just pause there. Actually, you can comment a little bit if you want in the thing. I'm going to stop my video. I'm going to watch you in the chat. The PDF is in The PDF is in the WhatsApp group. Okay. So I'll reiterate that again at the end. The PDF version of this chapter that you're looking at is already in the WhatsApp group. But I wanna go on a little bit more. So I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to continue on this particular document just to highlight some other things, okay? Okay. Uh-oh, sorry, guys. Okay. So, sorry, folks. I didn't put, I'm actually on my phone and I did not put, I did not actually, I didn't put it on do not disturb. Okay. All right, so here we are. I wanted to give you a visual for those of you who want to connect the name with the face. I don't really want to get into the Washington Du Bois issue today. I want to stay focused and get to introducing at least the two other Pan-Africanists that I discuss in here. And that is Du Bois and Marcus Garvey. Now, you probably read in here, if you read the chapter in its entirety, you probably read the part with Du Bois and their first introduction, Du Bois and Washington's first introduction. That being said, there are a lot of things in here that actually give you an understanding of the fact that what we know in American history about Booker T. Washington and W.B. Du Bois is it's not quite the truth, right? You know, the accommodationists and the activists and all of that stuff about the two of them. Not necessarily completely true. But I will, let me just go to the end. I will summarize in short what the differences are between the two. So I want to get you a visual. Okay. So this actually right here, and it's relevant in talking about Marcus Garvey. This is a very old original image from Tuskegee. And it is an image of the first international conference on the Negro held at Tuskegee in 1912. It was a conference that really was similar to the first Pan-African Conference in the sense that it was methods. It was meant for Tuskegee to open up its 44 industries. So Tuskegee is the institution that Booker T. Washington produced, if some of you don't know. And there are many actually models of it on the African continent. And I do talk about that later on, but it's inconsequential right now. This conference would be a conference where they would open up all 44 industries at Tuskegee, which was a sustainable model for African people that Washington took to export to the African world, throughout the African world. And what I mean by that is everywhere where Black and African people are, okay? At this particular conference, what would happen is there would be 8 educators from Jamaica who would attend. And part of this conference resolution would be to initiate a Tuskegee-like institute in Jamaica. These 8 educators go back to Jamaica and they share this information about the fact that they actually saw the Tuskegee Institute, saw the 44 industries that existed there. So when I say 44 industries, the 44 shops, right? Full shops. So printing shop, I don't know, mattress making. Actually, I do know because I could show you in the next chapter. I probably will give you a little bit of this. What is being perfected at Tuskegee is nation management, the production of everything that is humanly needed. And so Tuskegee opens these up, the industries, for members of the African world to come there and examine all of these industries, how they make various things from start to finish, okay? And share them and take the best practices that they see being used back to their locale in the African world. That's the point. What comes out of this is in the resolutions, and one of those resolutions is to initiate a Tuskegee-like institute in Jamaica. Marcus Garvey gets this. He connects with Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington invites Marcus Garvey to the United States. That is how Marcus Garvey ultimately gets to the United States. He corresponds with Washington from 1912 until 1915, the time of Washington's death, and they communicate about all kinds of things. Garvey is experiencing criticism in Jamaica from Black people who do not share his identification with Africa and African people globally. So he has a lot of detractors. He and Washington bond on this very point of having public critics who do not agree with their program. That being said, Garvey structures the program of the Universal Negro Improvement Association in 1914 after the Tuskegee model, which is to have multiple industries, all the industries related to the human necessities of man, woman, and child, master those industries, produce them, and consume what you produce, which in essence is a step and a major step in becoming sustainable and not dependent on other people. And so Marcus Garvey wanted to come and see Tuskegee that had perfected this. Washington was his inspiration in Up From Slavery. He says this himself. Booker T. Washington's book on Up, where he tells his story, Up From Slavery. Garvey says, he informed me and inspired me, but he informed me of my doom to be a race leader. Okay. But then going forward, he has this encounter with the Tuskegee Institute and then later Washington, and he is able to structure the Universal Negro Improvement Association in 1914 after the Tuskegee model. He sends Booker T. How do I know this? He sends Booker T. Washington a pamphlet showing that he has structured the Universal Negro Improvement Association after the Tuskegee model. And then Washington invites him to the United States and essentially invites him to the United States to see the Tuskegee model and institute in practice. And before Garvey can get there, Booker T. Washington dies. However, he doesn't die before doing one more thing that would touch the reality of Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey is coming from Jamaica, and in 1915, we're going to read about a case. In 1915, there was an immigration bill that included an amendment that said to exclude anyone of the Black or African race from entering the United States from 1915 onward. Well, this would have impacted Marcus Garvey coming from Jamaica. And therefore, it was challenged by Booker T. Washington. And I won't give you the details here, but this, because it's down the line for us. This is an important case. It's called the African Exclusion Measure. And this case reveals how American whites, Anglo-Americans, felt about African people immigrating to the United States. So much so that a senator from Missouri injected in the larger immigration bill, exclude anyone of the Black or African race from the United States and put them in the same category as undesirables and individuals, criminals coming into the country. This measure, this amendment passed in the Senate and was coming to the House of Representatives. It is Booker T. Washington, and I won't share it with you now how he does it, but it was Booker T. Washington who in effect defeats and gets this measure thrown out of the larger immigration bill. Therefore, literally a year and 2 months later, Marcus Garvey is able to enter the United States as a result. So Washington is both his inspiration, both a model for his organization, and yes, it is a proponent who defeated a racist piece of legislation attached to the larger immigration bill of 1915. He is the person who defeats that, allowing Marcus Garvey and many other African people from around the world to enter the United States from 1915 on till today, okay? And so this conference was very pivotal because this is the conference that is the impetus for the meeting between Marcus Garvey and Booker T. Washington. Marcus Garvey would arrive in the United States in 1916, March. His first trip would be to this place that we're looking at right now, Tuskegee, okay, to see this marvelous, sustainable African community that Washington was seeking to export throughout the world. So sustainable African community. I want to make sure I said that, right? Where we are consuming what we produce and are not dependent on anyone. Not that we are dependent, but under colonialism and imperialism, it is seek to destabilize us and make us dependent, right? In the same way that capitalism has done that. These are aspects of capitalism. So Marcus Garvey would come to the United States, and he is able to initiate the first mass Pan-African and African nationalist organization, largest Pan-Africanist and African nationalist organization in the world. I can't stress that enough, because not before or since has there been a larger African organization that spanned the world. The Universal Negro Improvement Association went from the Caribbean, and it wasn't successful in the Caribbean. Let me just be clear. It wasn't successful. Marcus Garvey had serious critics in the Caribbean, serious problems organizing, but he did manage to establish a chapter of the Universal Negro Improvement Association in Costa Rica, right? They had a base in Costa Rica, and they managed to have a building in Puerto Viejo in south of Limon in Costa Rica. That being said, other than that, the Universal Negro Improvement Association did not take hold in the Caribbean as we would have liked it to, or he would have liked it to. However, Harlem was different. He goes from Tuskegee to Harlem because not only does he know, everyone else knows Harlem is the base, the Mecca. More Africans from around the world, a concentration of Africans and Black people from around the world, unparalleled, meaning the number of different type of African people that settled in Harlem at that moment in time was unprecedented. No other place in the world had that level of diversity of African people. Okay. And so, yes, Africans from the Caribbean, Central and South America, from the continent of Africa, from the United States would all come to Harlem. We have a shared history in that early 20th century, 1900s, 20th century in Harlem, the New Negro movement, the Harlem Renaissance, all of that. So Garvey knew that this was a fertile place to build a mass organization of African people, and he does so. 47 chapters of the Universal Negro Improvement Association in the Western Hemisphere and the Universal UNIA also present in every dock and port where there is a concentration of African people in the world via one simple thing, the paper. Marcus Garvey would establish a paper called the Negro World, which would be his main method of organizing the African world under the UNIA. That paper would be in every dock and port, as I stated, where African people were in mass. It is the way people in Jamaica learn about Haile Selassie, not through inspiration, but through the Negro world, because it is Garvey's paper that features the coronation of Rastafari Haile Selassie, Emperor Haile Selassie. Okay, otherwise they wouldn't know. They couldn't turn on the TV and couldn't turn on the radio to find out about the coronation of Haile Selassie. It was in fact on the cover of the Negro World in color back then. Okay, so Marcus Garvey single-handedly is able to build and organize, build the UNIA, organize the African world through his printing press and production of the Negro World. Okay, Marcus Garvey, the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, who launched the first mass organization of the African world from his base in Harlem. And so now you know how he gets to Harlem and how he gets to the United States and how that is facilitated by ultimately another Pan-Africanist, right? Booker T. Washington. And here is Du Bois. We can't forget Du Bois because he would be at the first Pan-African conference. And he would be the youngest participant and in the first Pan-African conference. He would be the sole survivor of that conference who would go on in 1919 to establish the Pan-African Congresses, which would be a series of conferences around the necessity of the unification of African people, but not centered in the diaspora, centered in Africa and expressed as a unified Africa. What Du Bois would do is initiate the Pan-African Congresses, which would be the platform or the think tank through which African leadership would come together and assert that the total liberation of the African continent from imperialism and colonialism and exploitation had to happen. Okay, and that ultimately the goal for the African continent would be continental unity. This organization, established in 1919, the Pan-African Congresses, would be continuous, starting in 1919 and the most important taking place in 1945. Du Bois is still alive. It is known as the Manchester Conference. This is very important because you would have some key, and we get into the particulars of that particular Manchester Congress, because it would be there that Du Bois and others would assert that the liberation of the African continent from colonialism was imminent, and that the ultimate goal was unification of the African continent, not just one free nation, Ghana, but a continent that is free and unified And so this is what is Du Bois' major contribution to Pan-Africanism. I mean, to be quite frank, I mean, there's a lot that Du Bois does, the field of sociology and history and all of that. However, what he does in terms of being that sole survivor and proponent of Pan-Africanism, having the consciousness and development to say, all right, everybody's dead, let's work towards the continuation, right? Because we are on a continuing of this work that has to be done. And he does it. He did, you know, had he died, I don't know, had he forgotten, had he not been committed, the Pan-African Congresses would not have existed. And furthermore, just so you understand, I'm going to take this off, just so you understand the importance of it, out of the Congresses would come the creation of the body called the Organization of African Unity. Okay? And the Organization of African Unity would then go on to be what? Some of you might probably know, the African Union. Okay? Whose primary role is to bring about continental unity in Africa. Very important, very important. Okay, so that's the history. I'll take your questions. I know I'm over. I'm going to send you a series of chapters, resend the syllabus, along with a couple of other things. You will have a lot more reading this week than you had in the past. And so this is the week where we jump in heavily and articulate. I will come back to, and I took too much of your time already because I'm 10 minutes over. I will come back to the conversation of the journey of man. If anybody has any questions about why I showed that, why I asked you to watch it, it's important for us to be fortified in our understanding of who we are on this earth, right? And then we can start talking about how we live, which is culture, right? So that was, you know, the purpose of showing you the journey of man, a genetic odyssey. Okay, so you don't have a lot of questions. I think that's great this week. Thank you, Doctor. The constant continuation spent on the time. Right. Right. I don't. Hi, Denise. Yes, we spent a lot of time on the Du Bois-Washington conflict, which really isn't real. It's created and maintained by white liberals, and there's almost 100-year history written on it, which is complete nonsense. You know, I know the particulars of it, but I don't want us to sidetrack because that's a very American kind of thing, right? So this Du Bois, and it's a pseudo conflict, meaning it's a conflict that's not really organically or authentically what it seems like it is. It is something that was constructed, okay, and created by other people more than anything else. It's like the Malcolm X and Martin Luther King kind of thing, right? These two people did not have a conflict. However, once one difference is espoused, it is exploited and weaponized, right? And so we have to understand that. However, we still do what we got to do, right? We don't, you know, so that's why I don't get into that too deeply. And if you read the full chapter, you see where I debunk a lot of what people believe about that. Okay. Thank you, Denise. So we don't have a lot of questions. I'm sort of glad because I don't want to belabor the point I gave, you know, I sort of over-talked this session. This week coming here, your documents to be there on Monday. I'm going to revisit all the stuff so that you can make sure you have it, a revision of the syllabus. This chapter, you'll have 3 more chapters, 2 more chapters from this book. And then we start getting into proponents and the history of organizations. Okay, and so that is where we go this week. If you didn't watch The Journey of Man, A Genetic Odyssey, please do watch it again. I mean, please do watch it for the first time. That would be good. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. I'll be in the chat a lot more this week because now I have expanded. So I always do this on my phone, but I actually have WhatsApp on my computer. So somebody had a question right before I go. Can I please? All right, I have to do that another day. So let me just say this about when you say Bushman, I mean, you're talking about somebody who's phenotypically African, right? Indigenous to the African continent. If you watch The Journey of Man, A Genetic Odyssey, you would see that all the world's indigenous people are African. When they get to Australia, in that particular film, you see there is a deep fundamental rejection of this idea that they could have originated in Africa, which is very interesting, but not surprising. And that's good for you all as ambassadors to see that even indigenous people who are still identifiably melanated of Australia, and even indigenous people who are still, many of which are still identifiably melanated in the Americas, don't identify with Africa and don't want to state what is scientifically obvious, right? So the DNA is used to, in that film, is used to qualify the age-old theory that humanity had begun in Africa. And we know that this is a fact at this point. This is not a new concept. The science just allowed for a verifying of that fact, right? Or a qualifying of that fact. That being said, how do they, we still don't know, right? So we don't know if they are arriving in Australia because they have navigated the waters, but we do know that African people are sailing to the Americas and other places in the world long before any other group of people, right? So, easily could have navigated the waters. The distance might have been smaller between the African continent and the landmass known as Australia today. So let me just say this. You should have in your mind at least, and I don't know how relevant it is to this course, but I think it's very relevant. The default for human beings is the melanated person, what we call a Black person, an identifiably African person, okay? All the world's indigenous people are African, are identifiably Black. We just had the passing of a great brother, Runoko Rashidi, who did a massive amount of work on the global African presence. He went all over the world searching for images and artifacts that represented the African person, established that the African person is the indigenous person. So put it this way, all the world's indigenous people are African, are identifiably Black. Upon arrival, when they get to the four corners of the world, everywhere they are, right? And then they stay in those places and they construct culture and things change over time, right? That being said, default in your mind, human, melanated, and everywhere on this earth that you can imagine, that is how we began, okay? And then other things happen, right? In other places in the world, right? So, but Runoko Rashidi did great work. He's an ancestor. He's a new ancestor. And he did an extremely great job at documenting through artifacts this very history of African people as the indigenous population on Earth. Okay, I'm gonna leave it there, and thank you for that question. Yeah, so I can't give you the direct question, but however they got there, they were certainly the first ones there, and you still see that in the people, right? They're still melanated. All right, everyone. I will see you next week. You will see a number of things now that I'm fully up and running, and I have some more advanced stuff in terms of WhatsApp I can put in there for you. And you will get a question or two during the course of the week to prompt you to discuss what you're reading, because the reading is a lot more dense going forward. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, everyone. And I will see you next week. Stay safe. I am because we are. Okay.
Thank you very much, Sue.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.